Hey, what's up everybody? I hope you're all doing great. Today we're talking about Death Wish, a remake of the 1974 Charles Bronson action film, this time starring Bruce Willis and directed by Eli Roth, so let's dive into it. Now, honestly, I didn't have a lot of expectations for this film. I didn't think Death Wish was screaming for a remake. The trailers for this one kind of showed it as having a lot more action than the original Death Wish, which, in comparison to its 4 sequels, was a much more tame, slow-burning take on the action genre. But when I walked out of the theater of this film, I was actually pretty surprised with what I saw. I felt this one did what you're supposed to do with the remake. For the most part, it really does pay homage to the original. It takes the plot, it implements it into current-day society, it really goes into further depth on exploring the vigilante concept, and overall I thought it did expand on the source material in a lot of facets. It certainly showed ambition in taking the story in new directions. For better or worse, it makes sure to capture some of the signature moments from the original and some of the more hyper-violent moments from the lesser enjoyable sequels, so in the end this wasn't a perfect movie, but it definitely wasn't a cash grab remake. Now let's talk about the performances. I thought Bruce Willis, he worked for the role. He was definitely capable, he showed some effort, but he was also kind of emotionless at times, and it was hard to tell if it was just a continuation of him seeming honestly disengaged in the business overall recently, or if he was just trying to capture that stoic persona for the character that Charles Bronson mastered. Overall though, I thought he could have brought a little bit more energy to the performance. He was still able to pour enough life into this character to really make it feel like Paul Kersey and not just Willis being Willis or another version of his John McClane persona. He was certainly charming at times, and when the script tries to weave some moments of levity into the tone, he was certainly effective. I thought everybody else was more than serviceable as well. I enjoyed the combination of Kimberly Elise and Dean Norris as the detectives working the case. I thought they really brought a lot of personality into the story and the film overall. I thought Vincent D'Onofrio was solid. He makes the most out of a generic character, and I thought he had some solid chemistry with Willis. Now let's talk about the story and the writing. This is where I did have some issues with the movie. I enjoyed the story's path overall. It does take a little bit to get going like the original film did, and I'd like the incorporation of a few more action-heavy sequences. There were a couple of fun lines, but I thought the dialogue was pretty bland and lacking in a lot of emotion. The characters kind of said a lot of stereotypical things, and it didn't feel at all like the dialogue was tailored to the personality of the characters, which led to some predictable lines and just a lack of connection with the emotionally driven scenes. I also felt this film failed to capture the 2 key elements that set the original aside from the rest of the movies in the revenge genre, one being the natural path the main character took to being deemed a vigilante, and the other being the fact that everything was in self-defense in the original. In that film, our character would put himself in places or situations to make himself a target to criminals. He might flash a little bit of cash at a diner, or sit at the end of the subway with his nice clothes, or simply walk through a bad neighborhood at the wrong time of day, but he never killed anybody that wasn't already attacking him, and I thought that was unique. I was hoping to see that incorporated into this remake, but it opted for that traditional approach with a lot of convenient plot points to maneuver the story where it needed to for that final action-packed scene in the 3rd act, and I also thought this film was way too heavy on the media element of this storyline. I felt like there was way too much of an emphasis on that angle of the story, like it was trying to generate some social commentary when it should have just kept focused on being an action movie, developing Kersey's character and his evolution into a man that could take down criminals. But overall, I thought it was a solid story, and despite some missteps, it really did keep me engaged. Now let's talk about the direction, the cinematography, and the visual effects. This was another area of the film that kind of surprised me. Either I was expecting more hyper-violence from Eli Roth, or maybe he just played it safe, because this film felt very traditional in its approach. It's certainly polished, it's got some nicely framed scenes, it certainly has a gritty tone and a very capable feel in all the filmmaking aspects, and I thought Roth really injects gore at the right times to deliver a punch without ever making it feel like it was forced or going overboard, and while it was a violent movie, it was honestly pretty tame compared to what I was expecting. Which finally leads us into the action. I thought it was pretty well done and fitting for the story. I liked the mix of violence in the movie, and it was clear that Roth was certainly focusing on simpler times from the franchise before the sequels when we had Bronson shooting rocket launchers into windows. I thought Willis made the action work. He did show some effort in this department. He gets more comfortable with killing as the film progresses, and I thought the evolution of violence captured that that very nicely. I always thought the first Death Wish was much more of a crime drama than it was an action film, and that's exactly what this movie turned out to be. So overall, I'm going to give the remake of Death Wish 70% on the entertainment meter. It was better than I was expecting, and it certainly shows some effort in wanting to be a good remake. It didn't just retread the source material, it went a few directions I would have liked to have seen done differently, but I was entertained. And that's it for today, guys. Those are my thoughts on the Death Wish remake. Let me know down in the comments below if you're interested in this movie, if you've seen the originals. Let me know what you thought of those. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can come back next time. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I definitely appreciate it. As always, I'm Anthony. This is the Silver Screen Analysis, and I'll see you at the movies.